Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you all for joining us today. I apologize for starting a couple minutes late, and thank you for being with us. I want to start off by thanking the governor and his office and the team at HCD, including Director Gustavo Velasquez, who was unable to join us today, but here in spirit, and I want to thank them for their ongoing partnership and collaboration and commitment to enforcing our housing laws throughout the state of California. We've been a great team working hand in hand to enforce the laws of the state of California that are on the books, that are not suggestions, are not recommendations. They are the law, and they must be followed by all. And I'm pleased to have Megan Kirkaby here today, Director for Housing and Policy Development at HCD. You'll be hearing from her shortly. She's going to say a few words and help answer any questions that you may have. And I want to finally acknowledge my team at the California Department of Justice who made today's announcement possible. Supervising Deputy Attorney General Christina Bull-Arndt, Deputy Attorney General Matthew Struhar, Senior Assistant Attorney General Daniel Olivas, Chief of Policy Francesca Gesner, and Special Assistant Attorneys General Eleanor Bloom and Jessica Gordon. We have a great team working on this and many other cases, and I want to thank them for their incredible work in the past, currently, and the work I know they're going to do in the future. I also want to say thank you to Nicole Restemeyer, a staff member for the Assembly Housing Committee who brought this to HCD's attention. All it takes is one drive around any of California's cities, one drive through an underpass or by a deserted street corner to see that we're in the throes of an undeniable housing crisis. You can't turn away from it. It's everywhere you go. A crisis that touches every corner and every community in the state, including the city of Elk Grove. A crisis that will only worsen unless all of us work in unison, together, doing our part, pitching in. Each and every one of us, from state office to city council, has a role, even a duty, to check our egos and put our fellow Californians first. Unfortunately, we're here because Elk Grove has shirked that responsibility. Instead, they've chosen to stifle affordable housing projects, discriminate against lower-income families, and knowingly violate state housing law. That's why I, alongside Governor Newsom and HCD, am announcing a lawsuit to require Elk Grove to approve the Oak Rose Supportive Housing Project and fall in line with the law. If approved, Oak Rose would create 66 units of supportive housing for lower-income folks at risk of homelessness in an area in dire need of lower-income housing. Looking at the evidence, it's clear this project was denied because of the intended residents. Because while Oak Rose was denied under the guise of an quote-unquote objective standard, that housing project must only have commercial space. That housing project must only have commercial space on the ground floor. That was the articulated reason. A market rate housing development, subject to the same standard, included residential space on the ground floor, and yet was recently approved in the same area. So one project for lower income folks with supportive housing denied, the same approach in a more market rate project, less housing for higher income housing approved. That's wrong. Can't do that. Not such an objective standard after all, if it only applies to one project and not the other. They're clearly exercising discretion in a discriminatory way. The main difference between the two projects is that one creates fewer homes at a higher price, the other creates more homes that are more affordable. In fact, Elk Grove even admitted that its, quote, objective standard isn't really objective, which means they can't use it to deny the project. Elk Grove's decision to deny the Oak Rose project violates multiple state laws, SB 35, the Housing Accountability Act, and California's fair housing laws. Laws specifically in place to address our critical housing needs, combat discrimination, and increase affordable housing opportunities. And again, these are laws, they're not optional. They're required, they're mandatory. You must follow them. The law is the law. It applies to everyone equally. Every Californian has plenty of opportunities to engage in the law-making process. But this isn't one of them. This is after the lawmaking process is over and the laws are codified in our state statutes. If you want to, while laws are being proposed and amended and determined and finally decided, you can advocate against legislation if you don't like it. You can call, you can email, you can tweet the governor not to sign the bill if that's what you wish. You can challenge a law in court. You can even run for office to do your part in a publicly elected official role. But you can't ignore a law once it's in place, simply because it doesn't suit you. The laws are clear, and this legislature and this governor are becoming more and more impatient about the need to build more housing across the state. The laws reflect that. They provide clear requirements for expedition of the production of housing, streamlining of the production of housing, more ministerial review, and those laws are clear, as is Elk Grove's refusal to follow those laws. The message we're sending today is clear as well. Act in good faith, follow the law, do your part to address California's housing crisis. If you don't, we will be there to hold you to account. For 2 years, DOJ's Housing Strike Force has been monitoring compliance and ramping up enforcement where laws have been broken. We've taken action in multiple cities across the state, as you may have seen: Huntington Beach, Pasadena, Woodside, Encinitas, El Cajon are just some examples, as well as other local jurisdictions. And we're not losing steam, not even close. We're speeding up. We're going to continue to do more if the actions of local jurisdictions require it. But again, act in good faith, follow the law, do your part to address California's housing crisis. We're not going to lose steam, not when, according to HCD, California will need an estimated 2.5 million new homes by 2030 in order to meet housing demand. And yet less than 125,000 new homes are being built each year. The dearth of housing is driving up prices across the state, making our unaffordability crisis worse. Meanwhile, every night, an estimated 170,000 Californians, they sleep in shelters or on the street. This is the challenge California is confronting. We can't avert our gaze. We can't look away. We can't get distracted. We've all got to be committed to tackling this problem, to confronting it. You have to face the problem before you can fix the problem. Everyone has a role to play. Everyone has a part that they can do. So that's what we're doing today. We're making sure that those who have a role are following that role, not shirking it, not violating the law, not flouting the law. This isn't an easy problem. It's not going to be solved overnight. Everyone here knows that. But if we all pitch in, if we all do our part, together we can solve it. If each of us are committed to using all the tools at our disposal to advance housing access, housing affordability, and equity in California, we can get there together. We're committed to ensuring no one is above the law and no one is discriminated against because of how much money they make. And now, before we turn it over to questions, I'd like to invite Megan to say a few words. Megan.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you so much, Attorney General Bonta. As was said, I'm Megan Kirkaby. I'm the Deputy Director of Housing Policy for the California Department of Housing and Community Development. My division oversees the Housing Accountability Unit. I'm here on behalf of Governor Newsom's administration, which has been working in partnership with Attorney General Bonta and the Housing Strike Force. Together, we continue to be a united front in our commitment to ensure that every city and county complies with California's housing laws and meets their duty to support more affordable, attainable housing. The administration has made it clear, working together at the state and local level to ensure accountability for meeting housing development goals is the best way that we will succeed in achieving safe and affordable housing for all. And we're here to work with you. To that end, the administration and HCD have created and implemented a suite of tools, technical assistance, and funding programs to support local efforts to increase the supply and quality and quantity of housing at all income levels. Despite warnings from HCD's Housing Accountability Unit, the city has blatantly rebuffed our guidance and refused to approve the Oak Rose Apartments, a 66-unit, 100% affordable, supportive housing community in a high-resource area of the city. That can seem small, but every time we say no to housing, we make homelessness worse in California. The city's denial of the Oak Rose Apartments is a clear violation of state housing law. When these laws are followed, families thrive, we decrease and prevent homelessness, we begin to build more inclusive communities, and we unravel patterns of segregation and exclusion. These laws give space for local flexibility and input as jurisdictions are invested, if jurisdictions are invested in solving this crisis together. The streamlined housing approval process afforded by SB 35 is a key tool enacted to accelerate the development of affordable homes, which are desperately needed across the state to reduce homelessness. SB 35 only applies to cities and counties who are failing in their commitments to build more housing. Let me emphasize that again. If jurisdictions are on track to approve sufficient homes, SB 35 doesn't apply to them. But when they are behind, cities or counties that do have a development come before them for approval require non-discretionary approval of those developments that include a specified level of affordability and meet other standards that show the site is a good place for homes to be. In Elk Grove's case, they had a development where 100% of the homes are affordable for lower income households. It's an infill site, and as the Accountability Act also requires, it complies with their local objective standards. In other words, the project must be approved at the staff level without applying personal or subjective judgment, and the standards must be uniformly verifiable. In this case, the city did not apply objective standards in its decision to deny Oak Rose Apartments. The city's actions also violate the city's moral and legal duty to affirmatively further fair housing and follow fair housing laws, including a law prohibiting land use decisions that discriminate based on protected characteristics of the people who live there, including level of income and disability. The law prevents cities from imposing different requirements on those projects with subsidy than on market rate projects. In this case, the city has done just that. The governor and the legislature have knit together a comprehensive collection of incentives and laws that, when taken together, will unravel historic housing and land use injustices and make a dent in this substantial crisis. It's our responsibility to ensure that every city and county is doing their part, and that is what we're doing with this action. Before I turn it back over, I just want to thank our agency and administration for their leadership on this issue, as well as the following people for their work in the Housing Accountability Unit and their commitment to ensuring housing for all Californians. Thank you to the whole team, in particular the work of David Zisser, Shannon West, Melinda Coy, Gabriel Pena Laura, and thanks to our legal team, Ryan Seeley, Brandon Williams, and Marty Carr. And we are beyond grateful to the Attorney General and the Housing Strike Force for their partnership in this mission. In closing, I want to reiterate HCD's approach. We lead with guidance and technical assistance to every city and county. And when jurisdictions fail to comply with state housing laws, including fair housing laws, we hold them accountable. Thank you, and I will turn it back to the Attorney General. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. And let me just say that I'm very proud of the partnership that the California Department of Justice has with the governor's team. We are committed to having as much housing built as possible consistent with California law and to prevent those that seek to flout the law from doing so. And when we see violations of the law, we reach out to coach and correct and collaborate and get cities back on track. We've done that here with Elk Grove. They've resisted time and time again. And we wish we didn't have to be here, but we're here. Elk Grove's actions have left us with no choice but to respond in kind with a lawsuit enforcing California's housing laws in court. So with that, we're happy to answer any questions that you might have. Yes.
General, you mentioned SB 35. I know that, as you probably know, that law is scheduled to expire the next couple of years. The legislature's currently debating whether to extend it. Do you think it should be extended? Is this an example of, do you think, of why that law should be extended?
I supported SB 35. I continue to support SB 35. I continue to believe that in the middle of California's housing crisis, it has resonance, meaning, impact, and effectiveness. The legislature will, of course, debate and go through the deliberative process and identify any unintended consequences or positive impacts, perhaps negative impacts, and make a decision. That's their role. From where I stand, it's necessary. From where I stand, it should be renewed. From where I stand, until we get this crisis under control and more cities are doing their part and more local jurisdictions are pitching in to produce the number of units of housing that we need, we will need to continue to have laws like SB 35 that streamline and expedite housing in urban infill growth areas and provide more housing more quickly. And so I do support SB 35 and think it has ongoing resonance and should continue to be implemented into the near future.
One of, as you're from your time in the legislature, you're very well aware of the issues that surround this type of housing bills, and the same issues are surrounding this one, with the question about the labor standards. Do you have a position on that at all, or how this should handle?
Yeah, I mean, I think we should have high labor standards that provide projects that are going to be done on time with quality work, and move projects forward. I think that right now the labor issue has been a source of ongoing debate, which has not allowed housing to move as fast as it could, and providing commitments to using skilled workforces that will get the job done on time without delays, without work stoppage, that will get it done once and right and on time with high quality, so that housing gets built at high quality at a high speed is the way to go. So I think there's a synergy between high workforce and high labor standards and more units throughout the state, and we should embrace it and move forward and build as much housing as possible with labor on board driving us forward.
Mr. Attorney General, thanks for taking the time. In a sense of for us non-lawyers in the room, and I know both of you explained it very well, but if you wouldn't mind some more time, talk about the alleged discrimination here of violating the law, that what they did that they're not allowed to do.
When it comes to SB 35, you need to implement objective standards, and you can't exercise discretion. That's what it means to have ministerial review where approval is required based on objective standards. And here, they exercise discretion in Elk Grove inappropriately to block the 66-unit housing project. And how do we know it was discretionary? Because they exercised the same discretion in two different ways for two different projects. They exercise discretion to block the project that provides more affordable housing units to a more vulnerable population, a lower income population, and they exercise that exact same discretion in another way to approve a project that provided less units at a higher price. It's wrong, it's illegal, it's discriminatory, and they shouldn't have done it. That's why we're taking them to court.
You mentioned another project that was market approved. Do you have any details about what that project is and how it's similar?
Yeah, I mean, I think I shared a little bit about what that project was, and I can try to pull up the details here. Essentially, it was a project with less units at a higher price, and it had the same issue of what kind of units would be on the ground floor. Would it be all commercial and sort of pedestrian facing, or could you have residential? And for the Oak Rose project, they said you can't have any residential, and violate and disapproved of the project. And then for the second project, they looked at it a different way. So I think we can provide you a side-by-side with follow-up, so you can look at both projects, the number of units, where they are, the cost, and have a good comparison for yourself.
And this might be a question. Could you review like what steps you took? You said you didn't want to be here and took more. Like, what did you send them letters, face-to-face conversation? Like, what was the
Yeah.
steps you took?
Yeah, and definitely. I mean, essentially, exactly that. Calls, letter writing, formal responses, point by point. Our press release sort of lays out the chronology of the communication. But what we usually do is we provide a notice of violation, which says, here are the facts as we know them. Here are the laws that we believe based on those facts you violated, and we'd like you to come in compliance. We're not filing a lawsuit at this point. We're working with you to get into compliance. If we're wrong on the facts, tell us. If you have a different interpretation of the law, share it with us, and let's have a dialogue about it. And they provided their responses, which do not change our analysis at all. It confirmed our analysis. And they did not change their conduct despite multiple efforts to collaborate, coach, and get them on track. And so after discussion, multiple attempts, multiple efforts to share our thoughts and to get them in compliance, they continued to flout the law and violate the law. And so now we're here. The next step is for us to take them to court, and we are. Hi.
It's been several years now since the housing task force was created. Can you speak overall to the progress the task force is making, or whether any roadblocks that get in the way of the task force reaching its full potential?
HCDs or DOJs? Yeah. We're excited about our housing justice unit, our housing enforcement team. We've really leaned into the work. We've been involved in multiple facets of the broad work of addressing housing throughout the state of California. Housing production by local jurisdictions has certainly been one of them. From Huntington Beach to Encinitas to Pasadena, Woodside, and now Elk Grove. That's been a space that's been important. It's been a place where we haven't seen the compliance with California's laws that we need, and we've seen a real need to lean in that space to help address California's housing affordability crisis. We've also been involved in other areas, making sure tenants are protected, that landlords are complying with the law and following the law and not inappropriately evicting tenants into homelessness or out of their homes and into the street. We've been enforcing discrimination laws in multiple forms as well. So we've really put a strong priority on our housing justice team's work, and we're very excited about the work that they've accomplished in a very short time, and we're just getting started and just ramping up. I think the way we look at it is the biggest issues and challenges for the people of California should be the areas that we put the most resources, time, and priority into. Housing affordability for many is the top issue in the state of California. And so the DOJ should have a team that's fighting side by side with Californians to wrestle with that issue and solve that issue and make inroads and make progress. I believe we've done so in the time that we've had our team up and running, and we're just going to speed up and build more momentum and make more progress going forward.
Now, I know as a non-lawyer, every case is different, right? The last time I spoke about following state housing laws, we were doing the Huntington Beach thing. Is this a similar message today to Elk Grove that you with the governor last time over Zoom had shared Huntington Beach?
It's the same message, which is follow the law. A simple one. Act in good faith, also simple. And do your part to address California's housing crisis. You don't have to do everything, but you have to do something. And you have to do what's required under California law. So follow the law. You know, they have their arguments in Elk Grove about why they feel they're complying with the law. They're wrong about that. They're trying to fit in with certain requirements and accommodations that exist in the law. Huntington Beach, I'd say, was in a class of its own. They knew they were violating the law, and they did it anyway. They made no sort of allusions to anything else. They knowingly violated the law. They knowingly flouted the law. It was intentional, it was egregious, it was brazen. So Huntington Beach, by their own actions, by their own desire, intent, plans, and execution, are in a class of their own when it comes to the level of egregiousness of violation of the law. But the message is the same, no matter how egregious the violation of the law is. If you're violating the law, we want you to follow it. We want you to act in good faith. We want you to do your part. Every city, every local jurisdiction has a role to play. They can contribute, and they should. And Elk Grove violated the law in failing to contribute with the 66 unit project here. Any other questions? Well, thank you for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Apologies. Thank you.
Squeeze in just a little bit.
We like each other.
Yeah. A little closer? Yeah. Trying to get the poster in.
Oh, right. There we go.
Okay, everybody ready here? Ready? We'll take a couple. 1, 2, 3. Okay, one more. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Thank you. Awesome. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much.
No, it's great. Thank you for doing so much.
It's so lovely to meet you in person too. Oh, thanks. Good to see you guys in person.